Hello there, it is Jo from Minerva, and today we are going to do a fitting video on lengthening and shortening patterns. It's really tempting when you make something to just shorten it from its extremity. So if a skirt is too long, you cut it off from the bottom. If sleeves are too long, you cut them off from the bottom. But there's actually some better ways that you can get a better fit by lengthening and shortening with the Lengthen and Shorten line. If you have been sewing for a while, it's a good idea to maybe take another look at your measurements. They might have changed over time, or you might have honed your dressmaking skills a little bit more to try fitting in different places. So make sure you've got your shoulder length correct, make sure you've got your body length correct, and maybe determine your body type or body size, especially if you're using big 4 patterns which have a standardized sizing with a number that matches. And if you have a size that you buy ready to wear from different shops, it might be a different size. So try not to rely on the size number and try and think about your body measurements. It's a really good idea to take an upper bust measurement rather than your full bust measurement, because a full bust measurement will affect your neck and your shoulders and all of your arm fitting. So you need to take this as more of a true representation of your upper body size, and then you can do a full bust adjustment or a small bust adjustment to accommodate that feature. You might be disappointed to find that you have to size up on a big 4 pattern, but that is because the paper patterns from Simplicity, Burda, Butterick, all of those companies, they are working to a standardized grid, a set of measurements for a size 10 body, but that size 10 body was 30 years ago. So if you're a size 10 now, it's going to be different to 30 years ago. Diets have changed, how people work has changed, the underwear we has changed. So if you wear a size 10 in the shop, that's because the shop has chosen those measurements to be size 10, whereas on the big 4 patterns, they are bound by the standardized size for size 10 that they all agreed to work on 30 years ago. This video is particularly pertinent to me because I fall into a petite category, and although I don't look really petite in size, what you might imagine, I've got a very short back to waist measurement, and this measurement here is short and my body is short. I'm also under 5'5", 5'6", which is what most big 4 patterns are graded for. So if you are under 5'5" or 5'6", you might be thinking about some petite alterations for shortening and lengthening of body or arms. Just check if you think you're petite. It might just be that your legs are shorter and you're short in the leg. So try and determine, am I short in the leg or am I short in the body? Because that will determine where you do your lengthening and your shortening. I'm wearing the Indigo Dress today, so it's a pocketed dress, and because I am short in the body, then I needed to find out where this line is, because actually if I cut it as it was, it would have been like a waisted dress with a sort of the gather at the waist, and it doesn't matter so much with this pattern because it's got a lot of ease in it, but I still wanted it to have that sort of slightly empire line so I could shorten the body. I also need to often do a sloping shoulder adjustment because my shoulders slope down and then I end up with lots and lots of fabric here. So if you're longer in the body, you might need to move that so that you've got more space. If you're longer in the shoulder or bigger in the arm here, this distance here, then you might need to lengthen. Let's have a look at the popular lengthen and shorten lines on a pattern. I have recently been making the cashmerette Montrose top. It's absolutely fantastic. There's a little yoke detail on view A and a dual neck lace version for view B. But when I made it, I knew that I would have to use the lengthen and shorten line because from my shoulder to my hem was too long. And I knew that if I just cut the bottom off, you can see that this pattern is slightly grading out for the hips. So if I cut it off at the bottom, I'm actually taking out some of my hip room. But if I use this to lengthen and shorten, I get to keep all of that hip width and that angle here, rather than cutting it off shorter and ending up with quite a narrow top. So a lengthen and shorten line is in a place that retains the pattern shape, and that's why you see it on patterns. Obviously, if you lengthen and shorten the front piece by this 1.5 centimeters that I've taken out, then I will need to do the same on the back piece. If you want to lengthen your pattern, you cut along there, and put a piece of tissue behind and lengthen your pattern by the amount that you would like on that lengthen and shorten line. If you just add to the bottom, your top will just get wider and wider and wider at the bottom, and you want to keep that hip ratio in line with the waist ratio. So we're going to split here, so you get your lengthened part of your pattern here, and it won't affect the shape of the bottom. If you want to make just a little adjustment, then you can take a slightly bigger hem, but I know for my body shape, because I've got a wide hip and quite a narrow waist, that the lengthen and shorten line is just the right place for me to alter my pattern. So that's how you alter body length. This is from a vintage pattern, and the reason I've chosen it is because I know this pattern has an elbow dart on, and not all patterns do. So this is a very fitted sleeve, so if we want to lengthen or shorten this, we have this double line here. That's what you're looking for on the pattern. So this has been used as a short sleeve. You can see that it's been cut off, but I've kept the bottom for when I want to make a longer sleeve. And it's got this dart on, and this is for your elbow, but obviously it's no good if it's not in the elbow position. So you might need to lengthen or shorten this line and make sure that when you do, the elbow dart goes in the right place. So this double line is the lengthen shorten line, and the reason you don't just add more onto the end of here is because it's a very shaped sleeve. If your sleeve is too short and it's here on this sort of thicker part of your arm, if you just add to the bottom, then you're adding more of this sized arm. You're not adding and getting to a wrist width. So that's why the lengthen shorten line on a sleeve is usually about here, because obviously if you've got a long upper arm here, you could add a little bit in this position as well. So that's the guide. But the more you make, if you know you need a little extra length somewhere else, or you need to shorten somewhere else, then that is for you to decide. But you can't just add a bit on the bottom. You won't get the right shape. So that is sleeve lengthening and shortening. This is New Look 6106, and it's an A-line shaped skirt. So if we want to lengthen and shorten this, we don't want to spoil that design style hem where it's going out, because if we just add a bit more on, we will look like a paper doll. We'll look like our skirt's going out and out and out. Now this one doesn't have a lengthen and shorten line, but you're going to be thinking maybe this is your hip point here, that's notch is the hip notch. So you'll be wanting to just go down a little bit, because you don't want to split at the hip notch, otherwise you'll have too much space around your hip. So keep the critical bits the same, so the waist the same, the hip the same, and you'll be looking for that sort of line that we've seen on the other items, which is not the hem and not a hip, but halfway along. So you can put your own line on there. You just have to make sure that you've got it squared up on the pattern, that your grain line is straight and you're not making one side wider or smaller than another side. This skirt has a pocket. This is the front piece. So all the more reason to make sure that you make your lengthen and shorten line matching your back piece. If you've done one on the back piece, make sure that you do them in the same place. If you start changing things here to take some out of the body length, then you'll affect all the pocket pieces and facing pieces and everything. So try and choose a place to lengthen and shorten if there's no guideline, where it won't interfere with too many other features of your pattern. So that's lengthening and shortening on a skirt. Lengthening and shortening the body on trousers is a little bit more difficult. I'll just give you a little overview. This is Burda 7062, a sort of side zip simple trouser. And on this one, I've done a little bit more fitting than just the length and shorten. You can see on this pattern, I've actually lengthened the body. This is the front pant, and I've lengthened it because it was quite a low rise trouser. So the waist was coming down quite low. And so I wanted that to come up to my more natural waist, where I could feel that I wanted the trousers to sit. So I've added a piece across here. It happens that I've also added some width to my trousers, and I've added a little bit to the centre front crotch, but this is the lengthen and shorten place. If you do it near the crotch, you'll affect all of the crotch fitting, and if you do it too near the top, you'll end up with a really baggy waist. So you need to make sure it's right across that centre. If you've got a zip fly, then it's going to get more complex, because if you add length or take length away and you've got a zip fly, then you've got to alter all of your zip fly pieces as well, and maybe change the length of zip that you put in. This is the back piece of the same trousers, and there is a lengthen and shorten line across the back, and you can see there it's in that similar place that I've used on the front. And actually I didn't need to change the length of the back, I just changed the crotch. I did have to make sure that my side seams matched up, because obviously if I've opened the front then and I haven't opened the back, then I have changed the side length. So as soon as you make one alteration, then you also affect other alterations. So in this case, I've changed some things about the waist, so then I have to change some things about the facings. If you want to shorten or lengthen the length of trousers, again, we're not looking just to add some on the end, unless you want to make just a sort of 1 centimetre adjustment. You see here, this double line again. Do you need a longer shin calf length, or do you need a longer thigh length? That's also a good place if you want to open it up to make room for a larger thigh, or adjust for a smaller thigh. So there's 3 shorten and lengthen lines on this pattern, 1 across the crotch, 1 across the thigh, and 1 below the knee. The more trousers you make, the more you'll know which fitting areas you would like to change. This example, which is New Look 6449, a really popular pattern, one of my most used patterns, and I look at view A. I hope I can keep it all on the table to show you. But this is the front of a dress. It's got a fold line here, and here's the arm side, and this is the back. So imagine those two are joined together, and this is the armhole, and this is where I get my most fitting issues, which is this is always too long. So because I've got a petite body, the measurement from my shoulder to my underarm is actually quite small. So I would like to take a little piece out of here. There isn't a lengthen and shorten line. I don't need much, I just need to stop it billowing at my arm. So above my bust I get spare fabric, and also I get restricted movement in my arm because this is too long, so I get like a big springy piece of fabric here. So if I imagine that, I have now made space, the armholes shorter, so when I try to put my sleeve in, I'll have lots more fabric to ease in because I've made this shorter. So now the distance between there and there is too long for here. I'm going to do the same on the back, so I'm only really taking out just under 1 centimetre. That's useful because I've got a short back measurement, so now I've shortened the back as well, which is great, and I've shortened the front as well, so I've taken 1 centimetre out of my body length on the front and the back, but also I've taken 1 centimetre out from here, and that's really great for me. That's a petite alteration. But now my sleeve's not going to fit because I've taken 1 centimetre out of here and 1 centimetre out of here. So you need to shorten your sleeve by 1 centimetre or just under, because you've got a bit of easing technique in putting in sleeves. So you just need to take some out. So now you can see I've shortened the body and the sleeve head on the front and the back, and I've altered the sleeve to match. You can obviously do this vice versa, so you can open that out. If you've got a large bust, sometimes you find a longer seam needed under your arm, so you can open that out. You can open that sleeve out. Just be aware that whatever you do to your main body, you'll also need to do to your sleeve. If your sleeve has a gathered head, you probably don't need to do that. You just have more gathers in the head, but this is a set-in sleeve. That is how you lengthen a sleeve head to fit an armhole. I hope that's helped. I know it sort of ends up being quite specific to me, but I hope you can see the vice versa side of things. So lengthening versus shortening, adding width and taking away width. But hopefully those principles will help you to do a little bit more fitting to your dressmaking garments. If you'd like to find out more about fitting, then you can take a look at the Simplicity, Simply the Best Sewing book, a fantastic book. It's a Bible of sewing, but not just the construction of sewing. There's also a brilliant chapter on fitting and toiling. So here you will see some of the techniques that we've talked about today, lengthening and shortening. And also there's some really useful illustrations to help you problem solve some of your fitting issues. If you're looking for just fitting details, then this is the Figure Your Fit book. Again, a fantastic book giving you illustrations and really short, concise, to the point alteration instructions for you to improve the fitting of your garments. Do head over to Minerva for some inspirational makes by our Minerva makers and all the people in our sewing community. Sometimes you can get a little bit of fitting information from their description underneath, and it's good because you see lots of different shapes, all different body types and sizes, so you'll be able to hone your fit getting a little bit of information from the Minerva makers. We would like to see your makes too, so do make an account with us and share your makes over at Minerva. You can also check out our tutorials. There's sew-alongs, educational ones, fabric focus ones, pattern pairing ones. There's so much to see, so do head over there and enjoy yourselves. Thank you very much for watching. See you again soon.